Whoa, a NASCAR video? Yeah, I still make those. Wow, a big day today in NASCAR. One of the biggest penalties that's been handed down in quite a while has been handed down to RFK Racing and Brad Keselowski. We'll be talking about that, but also, very importantly, it appears that a classic NASCAR venue is going to be gone for good. Get the dozers, let's get into it. And this video is brought to you by Upstart. What would you do if you didn't have high-interest loans or credit card debt? Would you move to a new city? Maybe buy that race car you've always had your eye on. Through Upstart, you can pay off existing debt quickly with a personal loan, so you can tackle your next financial goal. Whether it's paying off credit cards, consolidating high-interest debt, or funding personal expenses, over 1 million people have used Upstart to get one fixed monthly payment with a clear payoff date. Upstart knows that you're more than just your credit score, so rather than looking at your credit score alone, Upstart's model considers other factors like your income, employment, or other information provided in your loan application to find you a smarter rate for your loan. You can check your rate without impacting your credit score in just 5 minutes for loans between $1,000 to $50,000. You can even receive funds as fast as 1 business day after accepting your loan. Find out how Upstart can lower your monthly payments today when you go to upstart.com/davidland or click the link in the description below. That's upstart.com/davidland. Don't forget to use our URL to let them know I sent you. Go to upstart.com/davidland. So you've probably already heard about this today, but if you haven't, NASCAR has issued one of its biggest penalties in quite a while to a Cup Series team. RFK Racing and the number 6 Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing Team has lost 100 owner points, 100 driver points, 10 NASCAR playoff points for modifying a single source supplied part. What that means is they modified part of the next-gen car you are not allowed to modify. And most, if not all, of the next-gen car you are not allowed to touch as a team. Obviously, this is a major departure from what NASCAR Cup teams are used to, where virtually the entire car can be modified or was able to be modified in some way. This is very different now. This is a true spec car, as we call them, where you cannot mess with it. And the RFK Racing, they broke the golden rule. Also, crew chief Matt McCall, because of this, has been fined $100,000 and been suspended for the next 4 races. And it's fairly interesting because NASCAR said they were going to be very, very, very strict on penalties assessed to teams that mess with the next-gen car. It's all about NASCAR's effort to keep these cars as close for as long as possible. Now, of course, everybody is going to jump to the Hendrick Motorsports car going to the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where they're going to have a tremendous amount of testing time and development time because they're going to have to modify that car to go race at Le Mans. And it's funny, too, that this was supposed to be so strict, and yes, there's no doubt about it. 100 points, 100 owner points, that's a lot, particularly in the modern era. And especially with the new point structure, you've lost quite a bit. In fact, it's essentially like Brad Keselowski didn't run the first 4 races of the season, nor did he win the duels, which now pays championship points. So it's essentially like he hasn't run the season at all. I think he's got 5 points in the championship. He's only ahead of a couple of teams that only ran the Daytona 500. But the way NASCAR made it sound, it almost sounded like it was going to be, you're going to be thrown out of the playoffs or something. Well, that's not the case, at least for now. Maybe on the second offense, maybe on the third offense, or maybe if another team does something more egregious, we'll be seeing a team get thrown out of the playoffs. But I would say one of the big parts of this, and one of the most interesting parts of this, is that 10 playoff point penalty. I think that's probably the biggest penalty out of any of this, because even if Brad Keselowski let's say wins Talladega, but maybe he doesn't win too many stages or whatever, he could go into the playoffs, assuming he makes it, with negative playoff points. So have to dig himself out of the hole in the playoffs. So yeah, that part is the big penalty, I think, the 10 playoff points, especially if you're going for the championship, because ultimately, I guess the points matter in some ways for prize money and whatnot, but again, NASCAR doesn't publish the prize money anymore, so we don't know. Speaking of a track that's not going to have very much money at all in terms of racing dollars anymore, we got to talk about Chicagoland Speedway, because we had our friend JPet27 over on Twitter, and you may know him from the old iRacing streams we did. He's the voice of fake Jackie Stewart, and he posted this update on Chicagoland Speedway, which shows a big industrial sized, and also, well, they're selling it for industrial reasons, for sale sign out in front of Chicagoland Speedway. And of course, the plans, it seems, to start the Route 66 Business Park are very much well on their way to completion. So yeah, I mean, I talked about this, 2 years ago, when the NASCAR 2020 schedule came out, and that was such a big change. And ultimately, Kentucky and Chicagoland were the two tracks that were cut from that calendar. And then you start going, at that point, you go, oh boy, things are in trouble. And particularly with how, especially, even though Chicagoland really isn't in Chicago, it's in Joliet, Illinois, the demand for warehouses and businesses, it's not going to go down, especially as the world kind of comes back from the pandemic. So this is very valuable land that's sitting out there next to a major metropolitan area in Chicago. And, especially now that they don't have a cup race, and it looks like in the next few years, the way money is distributed in racing or in NASCAR is going to be very, very different, depending on how the TV deal is, how much money is made, how much the teams negotiate to get. It could be a totally different business structure, and it is becoming a totally different business structure than the one that ultimately built Chicagoland Speedway. You look at Chicagoland Speedway, and that was really a track that in the early 2000s when it was built, that was a style of NASCAR racing. That was the NASCAR racing of the future, where the cookie cutter 1.5 mile ovals with a 300 to 400 500 mile race. And everybody thought that was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. And in a lot of ways it was, when you had, the Gen 4 cars at their kind of peak. But as things moved in to the late stage of the Gen 4, and then you go on to the COT, Say No More, and then obviously the early Gen 6 races, a lot of people really turned pretty quickly on the 1.5 milers. And, we're demanding short tracks, or as we've seen with Atlanta, they demand super speedways. And NASCAR is beginning to try to road courses, the other thing, and NASCAR has begun to try to provide those through any means necessary. And if it means getting rid of perhaps tracks that may either underperform or not perform at all, or could be sold for a much higher price and then just cash out of it and not have to worry about it anymore, as appears to be the case in Chicagoland. That seems to be where the sport is headed. It's definitely, those Marcus Smith comments, the sports entertainment comments. I was pretty busy last weekend. I didn't have a chance to totally comment on that video-wise. And believe me, I would have if it hadn't been such a busy weekend where I was flying between Sebring and Texas. But NASCAR is going down an interesting path, because it seems like they are really trying to pull out all the stops to get viewers. And was a track like Chicagoland necessarily going to pull viewers in the modern era? What does a modern fan want? What does a modern NASCAR fan want, perhaps, is the better question. And I think the answer may lie with Atlanta. Everybody talked about how, it's okay if we do this once a year, and then we have Daytona and Talladega. You guys don't understand. If those TV ratings go up, if the buzz is up, Texas Motor Speedway is going to look like that, and virtually any other kind of track is going to look like that. It's a slippery slope, and it's sad as well to see tracks like Chicagoland Speedway kind of bite the dust for a multitude of reasons, not just sports entertainment. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. A lot more content coming, particularly on the open wheel side. Got to talk about the Indy 500 entry list, and hey, I get to come out from under my bridge to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway once again, because they're testing the 2024 engines starting next week, and I will have full coverage of that. We'll see you in the next video.